When it comes to raid fights and encounters, you have to have knowledge of fights, be able to explain them, be able to call out events during a fight, be able to come up with a strategy, and be able to change that strategy if needed. It's one thing to know how to do the fight yourself, but explaining it to someone else so they understand it completely is a completely different thing and much harder to do. The first thing you have to do is understand the fight yourself. If you have no idea what's going on, it's going to be quite challenging to lead others in that fight. Your first step is to research the fight, preferably reading a description of each ability and watching videos of the people doing the fight successfully. Watch the videos until you have an understanding of what's going on and are confident you can explain to others what is going on. Once that's done, you need to be able to name the abilities and start coming up with a strategy for your team. Remember, Boss Mods calls out the abilities by name, so it's ideal that your raid knows what the abilities do and what they are called. You can use a strategy you saw in a video, or if you are really good at strategies, you can always come up with one yourself, but try to find one that makes sense. Now you know the fight and have an idea of a strategy that may work. The next thing to do is explain the fight and the plan to your raiders. The first thing you do in an explanation is explain the fight and abilities throughout the fight and how to counter them. Once the fight timeline has been laid out, you need to explain the strategy, and if there are specific mechanics you need certain people on, now is the time to assign them to their jobs. At this point, you should have healers assigned and tanks assigned also. Next comes the actual fight. Go into the encounter and try it. If things are happening during the fight which are very important and it would help if they were called out, you need to call them out. Watch your timers, it's very important. Don't call things out too late. Try to call them out before they happen, but not too early. Sometimes making a call out or two can save the raid from wiping and help down a very hard boss. Even when things are looking grim, do not call for a wipe unless you are very pressed for time. You never know when one tank, one healer, and 3 DPS can pull out a huge trick from their hats and down the boss. Finally, you have to look back and see if the boss died or not. If the boss died, fantastic, move on. If the boss did not die, try to figure out if it was the strategy that failed you or if it was just a mistake on behalf of a raid member. Not every strategy works for every raid team. If the strategy did not work, try something else. Maybe positioning the boss differently will help. If you're not sure what may help, ask your raiders. They will let you know if something seemed too challenging to them or if something was just right. Remember, progression is challenging. It can take weeks on one fight to finally get it down. Do not stress or feel bad over a bad night of progression. Always try to have a positive outlook and never think a fight is stupid. Just reschedule and try again the next raid night. The final thing I want to discuss is raid burnout. We will talk about it more in depth in another video, but I just want to quickly go over it. Remember, people do not like failing and dying over and over again, and it is taxing on people. If your progression is going backwards or not moving forward at all over many attempts, it's time to call it early. If people get burnt out, they will start trying less, and if they get really burnt out, they may not want to show up for the next raid. Think about your raiders and try to get an idea of how they are feeling. Same thing goes for you. If you're getting too stressed out to the point of getting angry at your raid, it's probably a good idea to call it so you don't hate your raiders and your raiders don't hate you. With all this in mind, you should be capable of pushing some decent progression, and with any luck, not get too stressed over it. The next video will go over what happens after a boss dies, including all aspects of loot. Please thumbs up and subscribe.